Hello and welcome. I am the Han Shadow, your host for this one episode podcast. You've read the title, I'll be talking about a Minecraft movie, which has recently hit the cinemas. Now, you may be asking yourself, who are you, and why are you making a podcast about this movie? To that, I say, I am but a humble player who has enjoyed the game for well over 10 years by now. I've made a post on Instagram in which I said, if there's no song references, I will create a one-episode podcast and ramble about it for like 30 to 60 minutes straight. And I'm a man of my word, so here we are. Now, for obvious reasons, this is a huge spoiler warning for a Minecraft movie. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Great, now that you're back, let's get started. My opinion on the Minecraft movie, it's quite mixed. On one hand, I'm really happy that this movie has been created. It was not just a complete cash grab, but something that had some actual thought put behind it. As for some references and details, but on the other hand, that's also a point on which I have to put my foot down and say some details have been not accurate to the game. And well, also, if you want to hear more of this, well, too bad, like, I'm not making another one. So let's get started at the beginning. Not the achievements, but the movie start. And since I've seen the German version, some inside jokes or voice lines may differ from what you've seen and heard, obviously. Now,
Hey guys, it's the Han Shadow from the Edit here. Something I forgot to mention, and that's the very start of the movie has the typical world generation screen that you have whenever you create a new world in Java, and I think that's a really neat detail. Anyways,
Child Steve yearning for the mines is quite funny, especially because you can also interpret it into him yearning for mines, as in landmines and so on. But what I didn't expect was him selling door handles after he grew up. Quite the hustle, but someone's gotta do it, I guess. A funny addition was also the absolute ankle breaker on the old man guarding the mines after Steve decided to come back again. And him then finding the orb and crystal made little sense in the German version, because they named the orb a ball, and later a cube-shaped ball. Like, that irritated me a lot. It's a six-sided block. It's a cube. What do you expect? It's not a ball. Minecraft does not have balls. Shut up. That annoyed me throughout the entire movie. And it also felt kind of rushed. There was probably more put into it, but they must have probably cut it to keep the movie short, like 100 minutes. That's probably pretty long for Warner Brothers, I guess. Would be cool if there was actually a more detailed version and to actually see that detailed version, but whatever. He then inserts the cube into the crystal, and the portal opens, and he stepped through. Like, he's seen a portal opening. It looks like the Aether portal. And I cannot tell you why, but the blocks that they used for the portal, I just... It seems like it's coal blocks. I'm not sure. Later we get a cleaner shot of it. And it may be obsidian too, but that doesn't make any sense because the only other portal in the base game is the end portal. And the only other portal that makes sense to put in is the Aether portal. But that uses glowstone blocks. And the end portal obviously uses end portal frames. So, would be cool to find out exactly what this is. You can write a comment down on what you think the block is that they used for that. Anyway, so he's going on to tame a wolf and building a whole theme park, creating the world as he wants it to be. And he names the theme park Steve's Worlds. That may be a reference to Stampy's Lovely Worlds. I'm not sure. I hope, because that's one of the rare references that we get. Guess I'm gonna have to dig a bit more to find more about that and to find more about that. And anyway, so then later finds a ruin, or a ruin portal to be exactly, with a conveniently placed chest right in front of it. And then he just pulls out an obsidian block and lights it with the flint and steel. That's just a normal Minecraft experience. Like, there's not much more to it, but the chests are usually hidden in more obscure locations on the portal, like below some blocks or in lava. I've seen it all. So he then steps through to get to the Nether, but it's a bit different than what we would expect, because the Nether in a Minecraft movie is completely harvested by the piglins. They need a another resource to harvest, because gold is like completely gone from the Nether, but they love gold, obviously, so they keep wanting to get gold. So the idea is that they need a way to get to the overworld, because the overworld has plenty of resources. I mean, just look at the Badlands biome, or just into the cave system in general. Like, there's plenty of blocks left for them. But that's not as easy to do, because, well, piglins in the sunlight, they will turn into zombified piglins, which is then bad for them because they lose their senses. So there is a current leader of the piglins. It's the witch called Malgosha. I think it's Malgosha, I don't know how you say it. I have a different name in mind. And in order to reach their goal, Malgosha wants to get the orb from Steve that he obviously held dear to him. But this somewhat backfired, because Malgosha actually managed to get the orb. I'm not entirely sure how she did it, I forgot. And she then used it to create like a land map of the overworld to form a plan, but Steve somehow gets it back and gives it to his wolf, which he named Dennis. And he tells Dennis to bring this orb to a very specific address, like his home address, obviously, and hide it there. And so he does. Dennis runs through the another portal. He loses his collar, and this is plot relevance. Like, no, really, it has plot relevance. And then he runs to the normal portal and runs straight to Steve's home. And he hides the orb below his bed. And like, I have a bunch of bones to pick with this scene, because Steve could have just followed him. Like, there was, at that very moment, there was nothing in between him and the portal. Like, he could have just bodied a couple of the piglins who probably would have jumped at him. And then he would have been home free. But no, he just let himself get caught for some reason. I don't know, they didn't explain it. I have no idea why, honestly. So Steve's home, Dennis arrives there and he puts the ball below the bed. And, well, Steve says that that's just a terrible idea. But, well, it's too late now. It's, that part was actually kind of okay. It's not something that you would expect from, like, a normal Minecraft experience, because when you go to the Nether, there's not gonna be a huge, bustling town of piglins sitting around trying to get to the overworld. It's usually not that. Usually you will end up in a wasteland and have to find everything yourself. But it was actually pretty good. It looks pretty nice. There was nothing too bad that I actually had to get angry at, other than the part where they keep calling it a ball and not a cube. But that's just nitpicking at this point, I guess. Anyways, the next part takes place in the real world, obviously, and we get introduced to the other main characters, which are Garrett the Garbage Man Garrison, a hardcore gamer and gamer of the year 1998, I think. 89. He also owns a business, which is a Game Overworld, I think. And yeah, he keeps on his aesthetic, has a cool pink leather jacket, and he wants to be cool, but he really is not. Then we have Henry and Natalie, which are brother and sister, whose mother's last wish was for them to live in a tiny town somewhere in Idaho. Like, I forgot the name. Fight me. And we also meet Dawn, who's Henry's and Natalie's neighbor. And she's also in the zoo business and has an alpaca in her car for some godforsaken reason. Like, that's probably not sanitary or safe in any sort of scenario. Anyways, going back to Garrett, his business, it shows that his business is kind of struggling because he got a hype introductionary scene where, well, we see him dress up really nice, go to his, like, consoles that he's set up his, I forgot what they are called, what are they called again, the old slot machines, in quotation. And he starts playing using all these old buttons. It's really nice, the scene, but it's like, the same problem that I have, it's not Minecraft. Like, I went there to see Minecraft and not some middle-aged dude playing some 90s video game. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but it's not what I want to see. Yeah, so the reason we see his business struggling is because he gets an eviction notice from, like, his landlord or something, or the city, I don't know. It's not shown. And he is really struggling at that point. Like, he's very enthusiastic about keeping his company, but he doesn't have any money to keep it going for any longer. Like, 90s games have fallen out of fashion, apparently. So he finds out about a storage unit auction, which is basically like houses get cleaned off because the tenants were evicted, or the stuff has been found on the streets, or for whatever reason, and that's being sold off to the highest bidder. And he meets the auctioneer, who's actually a big fan of the Garbage Man, and he tells him, like, we got a bunch of new stuff, and one of the newer units, it's filled with many flint-colored unisex shirts. So Garrett is, like, obviously uninterested because that's not gonna help his business, but he gets told that there's an old Atari box hidden inside of that storage unit, which piques his interest, obviously. And so he decides to bribe the auctioneer by telling him that they're gonna go on, like, a date or something in one of those flint-colored unisex shirts. That was weird. Anyways, the auction begins, and he actually gets to buy the unit for like $900. Remember, he doesn't have any money. Then he goes in and finds out the box is just filled with junk, like springs, balls, and general just debris. He then decides to go ham in the box and destroys a couple of things, but I mean, it's his box, so you do you, buddy. Yeah, on his way home, his car breaks down too, which is just amazing timing and perfect luck. Like, that's just the normal experience you would actually expect in a situation like this. Now, this is the point we also get introduced to Henry and Natalie, because they're driving down the road and they see him trying to revive his car by slapping it with his jacket. That was a kind of a funny scene. Now, Natalie is happy that they actually found like a good job in the city in Idaho, and it's at a company that's pretty big in their social media department. I'm pretty sure it was something with nuggets. I'm not 100% sure, but it was something in there. And well, she's also happy that the rent is pretty cheap, so that's all she is going for her. And Henry is supposed to go to a school there, and he wants to be seen as normal because, like, he's the new kid. He doesn't want to get picked on by anybody. But Natalie prepares a specialty that their mother used to make for them, which is a croquet pizza. My German accent really got out of there, didn't it? Anyways, he disapproves. He doesn't want to take it with him. But Natalie tells him, like, you can just share it with the people there. They're gonna be happy that they got to eat something. And so, like, Henry gives in and he takes it with him to school, riding on his bike. But on the way to his school, he finds Garrett's business, which is like I said, Game Over World, I think. And he's kind of interested because he's also into electronics, and the old gen consoles and machines have these interesting electronic circuits in them. And probably because he likes video games, like, duh. He's a nerd, I guess. And while we see Garrett stacking the shelves with boxes, which are probably still empty, especially the Atari box, there's probably nothing inside. And Henry's kind of excited to be there because, well, it's a paradise. But Garrett's in a bad mood and he sounds like pretentious whenever he says anything, which was a perfect scene if I have to say. So Garrett offers him a flyer, which, in his words, I forgot what he said, but it was something about, like, he offers some coaching tips for like $50 an hour to improve his life. He guides others to a treasure that he cannot possess at this point. He doesn't have his life together, and he tries to guide others to a dream life that they don't have. Whatever. So he also sees the croquet pizza, and he tries it. He says it's really nice, and he shouldn't worry about it. It's all gonna be fine. Now, Henry then obviously continues to ride his bike to school and arrives at the school, and the principal welcomes Harry, personally. And she makes some, like, really down bad comments. And she also dropped that her husband left her. And she's happy that he decided to come to the school despite its bad reputation. I'm honestly, I'm certain that this character, the principal, is the only reason that the entire movie is rated 12 and above. She's such a bad person, honestly. Anyways, a few scenes later, we see Henry meeting his sports and art teacher, who tells the class to draw a banana and an orange as, like, still art. Or, I don't know, was it an apple? I think it was an orange, I'm pretty sure. And Henry probably thought, like, oh, screw that, and he actually draws a banana with a jetpack on it, which is immaculate. Like, this drawing was 10 out of 10. Details, amazing. But his teacher tells him, like, it's not what you're supposed to draw. You're supposed to just draw the banana and the orange. Like, what are you even doing? And even his classmates tell him, like, what are you, like, an engineer? And Henry's like, yeah, I kind of like that. And so then they start a montage where he proceeds to sketch out and build a jetpack made of scrap materials. Like, he just builds a jetpack with stuff he finds at the school and at home. And obviously he then straps it to a dummy skeleton to test it out before he tries it himself. Like, smart man. Otherwise he probably would have died. There's so much gonna go wrong in that scene, I can already tell, but... Yeah, well, one of his classmates decides, yeah, I'm gonna mess with this kid. And just cuts one of the cables that's, like, behind the jetpack so Henry doesn't see it. And then Henry hasn't noticed yet, and he counts down, pushes, like, a button on his remote control, and the jetpack actually launches, and it flies into the air. And I honestly kind of expected that would just gonna blow up and shred everything in its radius to pieces, but that would be kind of boring, and probably not for a movie rated 12 and above, so, but the outcome is way worse, honestly. Because the jetpack decides to steer off into the horizon, like, going up and then just straight to the side. Straight towards a building, a company building, with a nugget on top, that's standing on two legs and holding, like, a flag or something. Their mascot. And that's actually the company that Natalie is working for, and she's, like, in some sort of presentation or something. I'm not entirely sure it was a presentation, or maybe she was, like, introducing herself to her co-workers. And, well, there was suddenly just this huge explosion. And come to find out, the jetpack actually hit one of the legs. Now I know exactly what kind of joke you want to make, so shut up. And, well, obviously, since it's lost its leg support, the mascot falls down into the nearby lake, creating a massive accident, or incident, you could say. And, by the way, that could have been fully prevented if Henry just double-checked right before he launched, like he was supposed to, but whatever, I guess. He's just a kid. And now, Henry's supposed to call, like, his parents, or, like, guardian, depending on what he has, and he doesn't want to stress Natalie any further, as he's already done. So he decides to take a chance after looking at Garrett's banner and calls him, begging him to come to the school and pretend that, like, he's his uncle. And Garrett's like, oh no, I don't do that anymore. Like, you gotta figure it out yourself. And Henry's like, well, I got $26. The things we do for money, am I right? So Garrett pulls up to the school and the principal actually starts glazing him. Like, making weird comments about him, like, praising him, everything. And like, bro, that Minecraft is a kid's game. Obviously, we've all grown up ever since we started playing, but like, brother, this is a kid's game. And they put these down bad comments straight into the movie. I couldn't. That was just a no. It's just a no from me. And also, like, Henry, I think he just got into Garrett's car and they just left. Like, they didn't do, like, any proper talking about this, no punishment. Like, Garrett, the garbage man, just pulled up, flexed a bit, picked up, like, the convict and just drove off. Like, that must be an American thing, I'm pretty sure. So Garrett takes Henry to his business, obviously. And Henry's kind of disheartened, so he pulls out his notebook and just gives Garrett back the flyer. He's like, I don't want to be creative anymore, and throws his book into the trash. And I felt that, honestly. That really hit home, because a failure can set you back so far if you're not in the right mental place. And I was like that too when I was younger. When something didn't work the way I wanted it to work, or something went terribly wrong, I acted the same. Like, I just wanted to give up at that point. But now that I've grown up, like, I see that it's important that a failure doesn't mean that you're not gonna succeed anymore. It just means that you have to take other steps in order to, well, win. In order to get the victory you so desperately want to get. Life lessons. And now Garrett sees his drawings because the notebook got flipped open. And tells him that they're actually pretty cool. Like, they actually were pretty cool. The science behind this must have taken him usually like months or years to figure out. And he tells him to just not give up. Like, Henry still feels down though, and he starts looking around, and he then sees the orb and crystal that Steve has dug up at the beginning of the movie. Now, pause. This is a problem that I have with this movie. Like, it took about 10 to 15 minutes of introductions before we actually got to what's been advertised, like Minecraft. A Minecraft movie. Like, I do understand that we need some pre-story before we actually get to the part that's important, and to understand the characters, the motivations, anything they want to be doing. But like, still, I don't think that it should have taken that long, especially because there was like basically zero references to Minecraft up to that point, other than Steve's units. And whoa, I see you thinking about a comment right now. And yeah, creativity is a part of Minecraft, and Henry also crafted a jetpack. But the human way. He was welding, strapping, wiring, and bending metal, for example. Of course he was creative. And I'm talking about like the video game in the background that has like I don't know, anything to do with pixels or blocks, or like a other reference, like some toys in Garrett's like store being, I don't know, merchandise, for example, from YouTubers or other stuff. Like, at that point I was actually like looking at my watch, trying to figure out how long it has been since we've seen Minecraft in a Minecraft movie. That was really annoying, in my opinion.
We take the short break to drink some iced tea. I hope you enjoyed the podcast so far, and I'll see you in just a second.
Anyways, Garrett, after seeing how excited Henry was about that crystal, tells him that he'll sell it for $9.50. And Henry then picks it up, and there's some sort of paper. I think it fell out from the crystal. And Garrett picks that up and starts to fold it open, and he sees there's something written on it. And someone, Steve, wrote something on it, and there was something like, under no circumstances should you stick the orb into the crystal. And on the back, it there was also something written that read like, especially don't put it in if you are a struggling individual in the need of money, because it leads to a lot of treasures. And, well, obviously this is meant to lure people in. Like, this is just how our brains work. If we're not supposed to do something, we're gonna do it. That's just how humans work at that point. So Henry decides to stick the orb into the crystal, and it creates like a very small shockwave. And then he notices that the orb is trying to drag him somewhere, and, well, Garrett and Henry decide to follow it. Now then, we see the scene change to Dawn walking up to Natalie's and Henry's house, and Natalie's also walking at Dawn from their house. In a panic, because, well, obviously she's looking for Henry, he hasn't come home yet. And Dawn tells her that Henry caused the incident at her company building, and Natalie is quite shocked about this. Obviously, like, he sent a missile at the building, basically. On accident, of course, but holy shit! Now, Natalie decides to pull out her phone to do something, like, honestly, I didn't quite catch what she was trying to do on her phone. Like, I was too focused on the fact that it was an iPhone 14 Pro Max in purple. I don't know why I remember this, but I do. Anyways, Dawn takes her phone, like, clicks some buttons, like, she probably opens the Find My app and decides to search for family members. And then she tells her that Henry is in some cave, which doesn't work that way, obviously. The speed at which it worked is quite concerning, because usually you click the Find My app, and then it takes like 10 seconds or something for the location data to be loaded. And especially if you are in a, let's say a cave or a building that has like really thick ceilings, like cement or steel, the Find My app isn't gonna show your direct location. It's gonna show the last known location, which is usually in front of the building or quite a bit away from the building, depending on where the last reading was made. And you were connected to the Wi-Fi or mobile data at that point. So it shouldn't have worked that way, but let's go on for the plot. Now we see Henry and Garrett walking into the mine that Steve yearned for. Well, Henry's getting dragged by the orb, but whatever. And Dawn and Natalie pull up quite quickly. Like, it should have probably taken them a couple of, like, an hour or something to get there, but nope, they just showed up there. So they decide to yell at Henry because he didn't come home, he caused the incident, and they couldn't do it for long because he keeps getting dragged deeper and deeper into the cave, and that's when they all find the portal. The portal, because it's still open, because the orb has been inserted. And so, since Henry is holding the orb, obviously he's gonna get dragged in and falls right through the portal and goes out on the other side. And then Garrett follows. And what happened next was actually quite funny in my opinion, because Garrett got up and Natalie also flew through the portal as the third person, and she flies right into Garrett, and he's just standing there. He just takes the hit like nothing happened. And then Dawn comes through, and as she hits Garrett, he flies away. Oh well, a little bit. Like, it's not like you get like knocked over by a person, like you get hit by them and then you fall back. No, he actually got knocked away. He flew a bit away before he landed, and that's actually quite nice. And I love that small little detail, because in Minecraft, when you hit somebody, they don't fall over. They get sent back a couple of blocks, depending on how hard you hit them and what you hit them with. But I've kind of missed the opportunity. They've kind of missed the opportunity here, because they could have made them like glow red, indicating that they've taken some sort of damage. But I guess they're not from that world, so not every single rule of that world does apply to them. But that would have been really nice, in my opinion.
Well, I sure get thirsty sometimes. Again, I hope you enjoyed the podcast so far, and leave a comment down below what you disliked about it.
So anyways, they then discover a pink sheep. And right, I forgot, at the starting scene, we also see Steve meeting pink sheep. Only pink sheep. And he then decides to build some houses, and one of them is built out of pink wool. And obviously, meeting a pink sheep is usually quite the rare occasion. It doesn't matter which version you're playing on, ever since the version they've been introduced in, it's a rare occasion. It just doesn't happen that every single sheep is dyed pink by a natural. That's not possible. This is millions to one. It is millions to one. Anyways, Garrett then tries to communicate with said sheep by speaking Spanish. I guess. He tries to have a conversation, but nothing really comes from it because he's talking to a sheep. Like, I mean, yeah, he's strong and powerful and stuff, but as we all know, the more muscles you got, the less brain you have. I guess. And now, he obviously doesn't get any information out of him. And then it quickly turns nighttime. And that's just the typical day-night cycle. It takes like 10 minutes of day, 10 minutes of night, and then it continues to juggle in between that. And Dawn also says something about that, like, didn't that go by really quickly? And then they heard some, like, leaves and sticks getting crushed in the bushes and behind trees. And so they look over, Garrett puts his sunglasses on top of his head. And then some arrows start flying, flaming arrows. Fly over the trees and almost hit them. That's just typical skeleton aim for you. They either cannot hit you for shit or are US trained snipers. There's nothing in between. And it's also kind of confusing because they had to shoot the arrows over the trees, which is... They don't do that. Skeletons require line of sight to attack you. And so them shooting the arrows over the trees means that something else must have taken effect. And well, obviously they all got flaming arrows, and they got the flame enchant on their bow. I don't know why they all got it. It's probably like ultra, mega hardcore, pro max, and knuckles. I don't know. But whatever. The bunch then start running away from the skeletons, obviously, because they don't want to die.
To make it easy, I'm gonna call the group of Garrett, Natalie, Henry, and Dawn the bunch. It just makes it easier to explain without saying every single name every single time.
And then some spiders also join into the fun, creating the spider jockeys. Now Garrett also tries to run, obviously, and he tries to go to a different direction, but falls into a conveniently placed pit. Which is just normal. You have some random holes in the floor in Minecraft. That's just what happens. And that was also a nice little detail. But there's also something I have a problem with in this scene. He fell into that hole, the skeleton started shooting at him, obviously. But he then just has a shovel. Like, when he fell into the hole, I did not see a shovel being placed in that hole. And he obviously doesn't know how to craft a shovel. He doesn't have the materials either. So, where did he get that? Maybe I'm just blind and didn't see it lying there, but I don't know. He then actually manages to dig himself to safety because the shovel looks like a shovel and that's self-explanatory for him, so... He escapes for now. Anyway, so the others, like, were still running and they've decided to run through the forest with some denser trees. And one of the spider jockeys, in order to create space for his brethren behind him, decides to dash forward a little bit. And that was a fatal mistake, because at that same moment, another skeleton decides to shoot an arrow. And the spider perfectly jumps into that arrow, creating a fireball. And all of the spiders and skeletons run straight into that fireball, and they all burn down to particles, I guess, is what you would say that. Well, crisis avoided! Yippee! But then, like, a bunch of zombies spawn in. And they decide to keep running, and Henry then bumped into a tree. And, well, they only... Henry only broke one block of the tree. Like, his noggin is stronger than many fists because you one-shotted that block. Nice. And in typical Minecraft fashion, that's just breaking the laws of physics, but it's the Minecraft world. You can create floating monuments without any floating devices. But there's another problem I have with this, because in order to, like, make the world more comprehensive for the actors, or budget cuts, I don't know, Warner Brothers didn't create the Minecraft world as it is in the game. Usually you have the blocks, which is 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. But they actually decided to cut that a little bit and made the blocks like, I think, 60 centimeters tall. So that was kind of annoying because
Henry
is like a kid who's 150, 140, something along the lines of that. So he should have been 1 and about a half block tall. But no, he was taller than 2 blocks, which doesn't make sense. That also kind of annoyed me. But movie magic, woo! So Henry then realizes what he's done, picking up the floating log, and he then decides to break other logs, and Natalie and Dawn yell at him to like keep running because they're gonna die. And then Henry starts building a wall. How does he do it? He broke 2 logs. There was like 1 tree that he could have broken, and he just suddenly like gets hundreds of blocks and builds a small little tower for them. It's not possible. It's simply not possible. Because the zombies were on hot approach, they take like 2 blocks a second, roundabout, like 1 to 2 blocks a second. They weren't that far away. So for him to actually break the amount of logs he needed to create that fortress, it would have turned daytime again, probably. Continuity issues. Or he's just suddenly found out how to dupe items and doesn't ever use it again. But whatever.
This is a moment where I was just looking at the script trying to figure out exactly which point in the movie I was currently sitting at. Yay!
Anyways, Garrett decides to dig back up, and he then gets out of the hole slowly, making sure that there's nothing near him, but he didn't do a good job because a creeper slowly walks up to his back. And Garrett notices because of the typical Minecraft grass walking sounds, and so he turns around and just punches the creeper straight in the face. And the creeper starts like hissing, like as you would expect. And Garrett is like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. And then the creeper just explodes in his face. Like, that was about a 1 block distance. Garrett just he gets sent back and just gets back up a moment later like nothing ever happened. Like, what the I don't understand. He doesn't have any armor. He has like, he's a human being. He should have died there in Minecraft. But I guess if this is actually ultra hardcore, as I would expect to be because of the flame enchants, he would have just been completely vaporized at this point. But he just ate that like, explosions, yummy, truly a giga chat. So Natalie and Dawn actually watch this happening, and Henry also does. And a zombie then spawns on top of on top of the tower because obviously they didn't light it because he doesn't have coal. He cannot make torches, and they just throw him off. And Garrett actually, meanwhile, is walking over to the tower, and he sees the orb lying on the floor within the crystal, and he's just looking at it. Like, he picks it up, looks at it, and looks at it, and looks at it, and then the skeleton just shoots and misses him and hits the orb, which causes the crystal to break. And because of that, the portal to close. And then Garrett snaps back to reality and just grabs the orb again, runs straight towards the tower. And as that happens, the zombie that they pushed off falls down right behind him. He tries to fight off the horde that is then starting to corner him, but he doesn't have it in him anymore. There was like a 10-on-1. He couldn't do that with his like power at all. But last second, Henry breaks the blocks behind Garrett, and they all drag him inside the tower and then block it off again, which is, I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And so now, well, they should be safe because zombies can't break blocks and they can't climb that high. Well, no. a creeper appears. And the skeleton, just before they manage to drag Garrett into the tower, shoots an arrow, hits the creeper walks up to the tower, explodes, and then creates an opening for all the zombies to just walk in. So they actually start, like, fighting off the zombies that are slowly getting up the stairs. But then Steve makes his entrance and fights off the zombies on his own, like completely on his own. And a problem that I have with that is he places an oak log slab. An oak log slab. That's not possible. That doesn't exist in the game. Like, given he could have crafted it before, but they don't exist. And also, we see Henry use oak log stairs, which also just don't exist. They keep breaking the rules for their own benefit. I don't get it. That's just stupid at this point. So he then fends off all the zombies coming in, and with perfect timing, the sun rises up and all the zombies burn down to particles. Which, usually it takes a lot more than 1 or 2 seconds for them to burn to ashes. They take like half a heart, I think. So it's usually about 10 to 20 seconds before they actually, like, die in Minecraft. And now, anyways, Steve then introduces himself in this iconic scene. And he then compliments Henry's build. But wait, how did Steve get out? Right, I forgot to tell you. The Piglin witch Malgosha finds out that the orb has come back to the overworld. I don't know how she did, but she did. And she tells Steve that he's gonna be retrieving that orb for them. And so he tries to get their trust. He gets it. They free him from his shackles, and then he tries to stab Malgosha by just stealing a sword from one of the piglins. But, well, Malgosha just pulls out Dennis's collar, which he has lost from his escape from the Netherreich. I told you this has plot relevance. Like, I told you to write it down. This was on the test. And she threatens Steve that they will harm or even kill his dog if he doesn't get the orb back for them. And since he doesn't really have other friends in this world, he bends to their will and decides to go and get the orb from them. Now, back in the present, you could say, they talk about the threat of the piglins or something. I'm not sure. I was too annoyed about the oak stairs and slabs. And then Steve wants the orb, but, like, the bunch or the misfits, how they are usually referred to, are quite hesitant, and Garrett decides to hand Henry the orb for safekeeping. So they disagree with Steve and they don't give him the orb. And they also start talking about the other dangers of the world, like the zombie skeletons, etc., etc., etc.
I forgot to add that Steve tells them that another crystal, the one that has broken because Garrett was shot by a skeleton, can be found within a woodland mansion.
And Steve tells them that he has an armory, and that they can go to a village, and, well, get suited there to defeat the piglins, who are currently holding his dog hostage, apparently. Now, Steve guides them there, and after they arrive, we see some wandering traders. Yes, traders. Something that's not possible usually. Usually only see one wandering trader and not two. That shouldn't happen. And we also see different villager types, like the cold biome villager types, the ice biome villager type, and just the forest villager. That's also something that shouldn't usually happen, but I guess here we are. And then there's this pig.
Whoa, is he some kind of king?
No. That's a legend.
And I have to say, this scene made me incredibly happy. Because I'm a person who has followed Technoblade's career for quite some time. And even his final message, like, it makes me want to cry, man. It's really Having lost him really was just depressing for not just me, but most of the people. It's a great homage to him. I am really happy that they put this in. And I would actually go so far that this is the best moment in the movie. Honestly.
Whew. Taking another water break and collecting my thoughts. As per usual, I'm not just gonna leave you alone. And I'll see you again in just a few seconds.
After they find this pig, Steve guides them to the lava chicken stand because Garrett needs his protein to grow his muscles. Powerful, strong man. And then he starts singing while cooking a chicken with lava. Yes, you heard that right. And honestly, I have to say, in the German version, the songs are terrible. Honestly, they are. Bless the voice actors, man. They are doing a really good job, but the writing just makes it difficult to enjoy. Especially the English version is a banger, but the German version is just disappointing, man. So, after eating the lava chicken, they go to Steve's stash, and there we see armor, weapons, boots of swiftness. Wait, is this like Terraria or something? Just kidding, that's from Minecraft Dungeons, obviously, like, I knew that. And also, Steve shows them
the crafting table,
where he crafts a sword using 2 iron and a stick. And, like, Garrett tries to flex on Steve, telling him, like, I already know how to do that, watch this. And then he just creates, like, a double-chained bucket. And he calls it, like, the Chuck Buckets. The Chuck Jug. And that's just... He needs a 3x3 grid to craft a bucket. You have 3 iron that you have to place. And you also need to have a 3x3 grid to create a chain with, like, nuggets and iron. Like, it should not have been possible. Continuity errors is something that pisses me off beyond belief. Like, and he also just threw the stuff on there. Like, he doesn't even align it. He's just, hammer, buckets. What? Henry, however, does it quite a bit differently. He uses, like, ingots, batteries, and a croquet to craft a croquet launcher, which was kind of funny. Like, in my opinion, it's interesting, and it's also showing that he is an engineer. He likes to play modded Minecraft. That's what the creators said, not me. So they also look around and open the chest, and Garrett finds an ender pearl. And Steve tells him that this is his only one, and it allows him to teleport to the spot it's thrown. And Garrett is like, yeah, sure, and throws it away. Then he teleports away too. That was kind of funny. But we also see a totem of undying in that chest.
That is foreshadowing.
And meanwhile, the piglins find out that Steve has shown the misfits around the world, and they interpret that as him betraying them, and Magosha sends out Chungus. Yes, Chungus. A thick piglin with a gentle voice. At least in German it was gentle. Apart from his screaming, that was kind of weird, but whatever. So the misfits also after that tell Steve that the crystal has broken. But I'm pretty sure now that I've revised the scripts, they've told him before, and he told them that they need to get to the mansion on top of the tower, so this whole part is just wrong at this point.
Told ya.
And I'm just thinking, like, how does he know where to find the crystal? Like, of course he has a totem of undying, and he had to have been at a mansion to get that, but why doesn't he just have another crystal? Like, if he has looted a mansion before, he must have got another crystal. But maybe he didn't get that far because he just killed an evoker and then had to dip out because he was constantly being attacked by pillagers. I'm not sure. That's just plot holes at this point. These plot holes are quite massive. Shut up. Now, anyways, he tells them where a mansion is, But without a map, they cannot find it, so they take a look around the village and find a cartographer. And Natalie and Dawn actually figure that out and tell the others where he is. And so they start bargaining with the villager, like trying to convince him that they need this map. But they just get jumped by the piglins, and they use gas balloons to shoot fireballs at the village. Yes, gas balloons, you heard that correctly. And well, Chungus made his way there with his army. But how do they just not turn into zombified piglins? Well, Malgosha has created a potion of nether warts. Or something, so they gain immunity to being zombified. I guess. Now, the piglins then start destroying the village, and they attack Steve and the Misfits. And, well, they start fighting against the piglins to survive, obviously, and Garrett decides, like, I'm gonna take on Chungus, but Chungus doesn't care, and he just tosses Garrett to the side, like, it's nothing. And then Steve tries to battle him, but Garrett, like, slips in front of him and knocks him out with one of the buckets. That scene was so funny. He's just swinging it around and just knocks him away. And, like, Garrett sees that and is like, oh shit, I messed up. And he tries to defend Steve, but he gets tossed back again. And Chungus is about to kill Steve, like, swinging down a sword, but then the Iron Golem, that is living in the village, obviously, comes in and just smacks Chungus straight into next week. And so, Steve has awakened, but the piglins still have them in the chokehold, and he's like, what happened? And Garrett's like, I just saved your fucking life, man. And so, they decide to leave the village to get to safety. And Steve, Garrett, and Henry run up a mountain to go through a gate. And Dawn and Natalie get separated from them and have to find another way around. And I honestly forgot what they have done because of the next part that's coming up right now. Because Steve, Garrett, and Henry end up at like a huge drop, like a cliff, you could say. And instead of like climbing down or starting to bridge or like using water to get down, Steve pulls out elytras. How in the world does Steve have elytras? From all we know, he never made it to the end dimension. And if he did, there would probably be much more than just one ender pearl in his arsenal. And he was trapped in the nether until the Misfits made their way to the overworld. And there's also no elytras there, so how in the world did he get elytras? He's hacking, bro. He used /give to give himself elytras. I don't know, man. That annoyed me so much because he never went to the end dimension. Never, ever, ever. But movie magic, woohoo!
So just recently I found out that in the Polish version of the movie, Steve actually tells them that he got the elytras by trading with one of the wandering traders. Which also doesn't make any sense because wandering traders cannot carry elytras. But like I said, movie magic, woo!
Now anyways, Steve then equips the elytras onto Henry and Garrett. And Garrett just like throws Henry off the mountain. And then he's like, you know these work, right? And Steve's like, yeah, they work. And so Henry stretches out his arms and then actually flies up. Which is not possible. Usually if you use the elytra, you can fall and then go back up, but you will never reach a spot higher than the spot you've jumped from. So he went like, 30 blocks higher than the approach platform. So it shouldn't have worked, but movie magic. Now, Garrett then also jumps, and Steve notices that he doesn't have any elytras left, so he's coming in hot, and that's maybe a reference to the Kratos meme. Now, after jumping off, he lands on Garrett's back, and he uses him to fly. Like, damn, they really be doing the seagull meme here. And then all seems well, and they start flying into the direction of the Woodland Mansion. But they're then suddenly attacked by more gas balloons, and they're being shot at by both fireballs and arrows. And they end up flying side by side, and Henry actually pulls out a firework rocket that he had in put into his like little bag, and he flies over like a small wall that was a small natural wall, and the piglins actually tried to catch them using ghasts and like a net that they like started to lift up using the ghasts. Henry actually got past that, but Steve and Garrett weren't that lucky. Now a fireball that missed Garrett and Steve actually hit the wall, creating like a very small hole. And now we get to a scene that made me quite uncomfortable, because Steve decided to get down from Garrett's back and straight in front of Garrett, and they started like hugging each other very tight.
I'm pretty sure that Steve didn't get down there on his own. He probably fell because he lost balance or was attacked by something. I'm sure he dodged an arrow or something.
And I mean, I guess you have to do that to be safe. But then Steve gets hit by something, I think. And they end up in like a 69 position. And they actually have to close their legs to fit through that hole. And they just made so many comments. Bro, this is a kids movie. Minecraft is a kids game. Whatever, I'm done with this scene. Now, anyways, they actually managed to get through that hole perfectly, but their elytra breaks, and so does Henry's, I think. And somehow they managed to grab Henry mid-air to keep him close. And then the scene changes, and on the ground we see a little bamboo forest with like pandas who are eating bamboo sitting next to each other. And you then see the typical heart particles that you would get when breeding mobs. And then just a panda, like a baby panda, just appears next to them. This is perfect Minecraft logic. Doing it again. I love this scene. But then we cut back to Steve, Garrett, and Henry. And they're coming in hot again. And they're like yeet themselves straight towards the floor, and Steve then pulls out a water bucket and manages to clutch using the water bucket clutch. Well, that was quite obvious, wasn't it? But this scene, I really like that they put the scene in, but they did it wrong too. Like, the water bucket clutch is a staple in the Minecraft community, and it's used by every player who has more than like 2 brain cells. It requires a lot of skill and precision to pull off, depending on how high your actual fall was. If you fell like from 2 or 3 blocks, like place it easy. But if you fell from like 100 blocks or something, it's quite difficult because your velocity creates quite a problem for you. But that's a talk for a different time, you might say. Now, the problem I have with the scene is that Steve actually chucked out the water like it's just normal water, which is not what happens when you play Minecraft. If you ever played Minecraft, you don't chuck the water out. You get a water bucket, and then you place a block of water that then spreads out. So they decided to mix reality and Minecraft physics with each other and created this conundrum. Because then, as the water hit the floor, usually you would create, like I said, a block of water which is 1 by 1 by 1 meter wide. But as the water hits the floor, it creates a 3 by 3, 3 block high water cube and a smaller 2 by 5 by 5 water area around that. Like I said, continuity errors. It's man. Anyways, they hit that water straight up and just don't die. Like, they just get wet a little bit and that's fine. And so then they get up and start forming a plan on how to continue. And I also forgot to mention that a villager, after the misfits have come through the portal, actually made his way through the portal too. And now he's chilling in the real world, but obviously something had to happen. So he was walking towards the roads, and he notices cars going by, and he's looking like, something going on. And he's like, oh, there's nothing there, and he walks on the road, and then he gets run over by a car. And he does the villager hurt sounds, but they weren't really like villager hurt sounds. They sounded very cursed, in my opinion. very, very cursed. Now, the person who was driving the car got out to check on them, and it's the principal that we've seen at the start of this movie. And so she's like, oh no, oh dear, how did that happen? Like, are you okay? Please don't sue me. And they're just like, oh, you got a big head, you're definitely gonna sue me. And then she just like falls in love with him. And they decide to have like dinner together. Like she says, oh, I would love to have dinner with you. And they are sitting in like this restaurant, the villager, just chilling amongst humans. Like nobody's looking at them. And she just trauma dumps and tells her his life story and makes some really down bad comments. And he's just sitting there like, alright. He doesn't say anything. He's just moving his head around and raising his eyebrows and shit. Typical villager things. Now, this whole ordeal, like, this is probably a homage to the fact that if you have ever tried to control a villager, they will always go to every single location except the location you want them to go. That happens quite a lot, and it's the reason why many players want to put villagers on leashes, but obviously it's not possible because they're human beings, technically. So we use boats to maneuver them around. Anyways, going back to the plot, the three continue to make their way to the mansion, but Garrett then gives a look to Steve, and Steve says that they will have to go to the redstone mines. Wait, I forgot to mention something, actually. Because when they were still at Steve's armory, Garrett tells Steve that he wants to know more about this treasure. This is the reason he came there for the treasure, to save his struggling business and himself, obviously, from any trouble. And Steve is like, oh, I have another secret stash in the redstone mines, but it's like guarded by traps and stuff. And Garrett then asks him, oh, let's go there. You will lead us to there, won't you? And shows Steve the orb that he has taken from Henry when he wasn't looking. And obviously, since Steve wants the orb, he obliges. So they make their way to the mines instead of the mansion. And try to find the treasure stash. Now, Steve is not exactly sure where it was, but that doesn't matter because Garrett triggers a bunch of traps, getting hit by arrows, getting like hit by a rock at his head. I'm pretty sure like he gets hit twice there by an arrow and a rock. Then he falls off a ledge, climbs back up like nothing happened. Like, not even a concussion, nothing. This dude is a stud. On God. Now, after Garrett got back up, a hidden door opens, and they then find a room full with barrels of diamonds. And Garrett's like, oh yeah, that's what I'm here for. And he grabs a couple, and Henry gets mad because they made an unnecessary detour, because obviously his sister is in danger. That's what he worries about the most at the moment. And then they hear explosions. And, well, obviously the piglins have found them. But I also skipped another part. They have a new recruit. Magosha has ordered the piglins to create some super piglin, like a piglin monster. I don't know the exact name, please. I'm gonna watch after I record this, man.
It's called the Great Hog.
But they just needed to add a brain to it before it was ready. And now they've managed to do that. I don't know where they got the brains from. Like, piglin brains are too underdeveloped to be in there. So it's probably just like a brawler. And well, now that monster and some other piglins are chasing them down. So Steve leads them to some minecart tracks. And they quickly just hopped into like minecarts. And then they drive off using powered redstone rails. But the redstone minecart tracks end. And normal minecart tracks start to come in. And they're all surrounded by darkness. You see nothing at that scene. And then they light a torch. And they're fully surrounded by creepers. And it's pretty weird because Steve calls this his, like, creeper farm. Like, I don't see any safety measures. Now, as you might have noticed, creepers in the movie are neutral, which is not the case. Usually if you are playing Minecraft and you see a creeper and it sees you, it's gonna walk up to you and just blow up straight. Like, you're just dead at that point if you don't run. But in that world, they will approach you, but they won't blow up instantly unless you do something to them. Which, well, is okay, because you can just kill the creeper before it explodes, but one wrong move, like you spin too much, you hit another creeper, and it's wraps, bro, it's wraps. You gotta run, you kill every single creeper that's in there. Now, anyways, the piglins are like catching up to them, and Henry says like, this is your fault, Garrett, and so Garrett says, okay, I'm gonna get us out of here, jumps out the minecart, and pushes it forward. And there's like one redstone track that's further away, outside of the creeper farm. And so they're like, keep on pushing, Garrett, keep on pushing. And then Steve gets the idea to punch the creepers to get them to explode before the piglins can reach them. And so they do, and Garrett keeps pushing, they punch the creepers. The whole cave blows up, and they just barely reach the minecart track. Which is just movie magic again. Building suspense, you gotta love it. And while they reach the minecart track, the whole cave behind them blows up. The piglins and this piglin monster get completely annihilated. They manage to leave the cave as it gets blown to bits. And, well, happy ending, woohoo. Yay. Now, at some point in there, Steve actually explained the other reason why the piglins want to attack the overworld, because they actually used to host, like, talent shows, and Malgosha actually took part in one of them. And trying to be creative, she busted out some moves to pigstep. Yes, pigstep. Now, it makes sense, but I'm still mad at the fact that there wasn't, like, a single parody song played so far. Like, they should have, like, done something about this. They could have rewritten the script a little bit to add these. I don't know. I would have written something else, but we'll get to that later. Doesn't really matter at the moment. Anyways, during her performance, it looked like she kind of pooped herself, which I thought was funny. At least there was something brown falling down from her leg. The piglins in the crowd didn't like the performance or the fact that she made a mess on stage, and Malgosha just walked away defeated. And another piglin yelled at Malgosha that creativity doesn't gain anything. And she then decided to destroy everything that was creative. And we actually get to see that earlier in the movie, because there's a small little piglin who draws an image of like a house in the overworld. And he's like all happy, and then just Malgosha stabs him. Brutal, I know, but that's actually what happens. Now anyways, Henry, Garrett, and Steve continue to make their way towards the mansion, and Henry is still mad at Garrett, obviously. And he's even more mad after he gets told by Garrett that Garrett has taken his orb. And Garrett gives it back to Henry in order to make sure that he tries to calm him down, but it doesn't really work because they're still arguing. But they then make up at some point, and Steve then starts to explain how they approach the mansion. Alright, so after they made up, they did also kind of change how the mansion works to make it more feasible for the movie, because usually it's just all randomized, cluttered up and shit. So, Steve also explains this quite well. And I also think that's a good idea, because just running around the mansion aimlessly would be kind of boring, honestly. So, let Steve explain this. Now, he explains us that there's 3 levels to this mansion. Like, 3 floors. The first one is guarded by axe-swinging pillagers. And the second floor is guarded by the evokers. I forgot what he called them. Like, he also called them some nickname, but I'm not 100% sure. And the third and final floor is the treasure room, which is guarded by Endermen. Which is usually Endermen usually have nothing to do with the mansions other than just stealing a couple blocks because they feel like it. But whatever, man. So they decide to scope out the area, and Garrett actually comes up with a plan. Garrett, the big muscle, no brain character, comes up with a plan. Now, meanwhile, Dawn and Natalie are actually walking through the root forest biome, and they have like a heart-to-heart talk. Like, talked about their feelings, about their experiences, and they're fighting against some zombies in the background, which is kind of funny. Like, they just beat this guy up while they're walking. That kind of made me chuckle at the time. And they also encounter a wolf. Yes, a wolf. They encounter a wolf. And Dawn uses a bone from a skeleton to tame it, and turns out that that wolf was Dennis. It's not possible, because a tamed wolf cannot be tamed by another person. It doesn't work that way. But movie magic, woo! Now, anyways, they tell Dennis to lead them to Steve. And now in the mansion, in order to get any progress done, Garrett and Steve actually dress up with like mushrooms and instruments, and they perform a song, which is also not a parody song, again, to distract the pillagers. Meanwhile, Henry reaches the second floor and evades some evokers and some more pillagers, and he then reaches the treasure room and checks every single chest, like you would, obviously. He finds many items like swords, axes, golden apples, and more junk. And in the very last chest, that's also just at the end of the hallway, like he comes in, has chests to the right and left, and at the very end of the hallway there's also some chests. He just walks up to that chest at the very end, opens it and finds the crystal finally. But then an Enderman spots him and teleports like right behind him. So Henry takes a deep breath, he closes his eyes and turns around. Now, remember, he has his eyes closed. He doesn't look at the Enderman directly, he has his eyes closed. So there shouldn't be anything he needs to worry about, right? Well, no. The Enderman still aggroes onto him, and as he's looking at the Enderman, he gets shown images of Steve, Natalie, Dawn, and Garrett, who all say mean things to and about him. And there's also maybe a reference to Herobrine, because Steve in that scene has completely white eyes, but I don't know. Possibly. Now, Henry manages to snap out of it somehow, because he realizes, wait, that's actually not real, that cannot be real, after seeing his sister talk shit about him. And so he just decides to use the axe that he picked up from the chest, and just swings it around violently in front of him. And the Enderman tries to attack him, but the swings are just so perfectly timed that every time the Enderman tries to get close, he gets hit again and again and again and again, and then it eventually dies. And it actually drops a pearl, which was also kind of funny. Now, Henry swung the axe like he was using the texture pack actions and stuff for Bedrock Edition, where you also swing the axe around or the sword around like you're doing something. But wait, the Enderman dropped an ender pearl. In this entire time, Steve only found one ender pearl. Now, given the ease that Henry had with killing the Enderman, how did Steve not gather any more? Like, it's possible that he has found a lot of ender pearls before, but used most of them, and only has one left. It's possible, but I don't think that's what happens, if I'm being honest with you guys. Now, after that, Henry gets spotted by the pillagers, and Garrett and Steve's act also goes way downhill. And, I gotta be honest here, I was more caught up in the fact that Steve didn't have more ender pearls. I haven't actually seen how they managed to leave the mansion without that much issue. But, well, they got out in the end and ran onto the bridge in front of it. And on the bridge they were ambushed by piglins on both sides. And more gas balloons on the very side of the bridge. And Malgosia also shows up and manages to steal the orb from Henry's bag. Which, that's gonna be quite the subtle issue that we have later in the movie. Now, once again, after Malgosia has left, Garrett just picks up Henry and throws him at a gas balloon. And he just knocks off the piglins by accident. And on the bridge, the piglins then pull out some TNT and threaten to kill them. In Minecraft. Good save. Now, Steve follows Henry by using a slime block to propel himself up and away. That's not how slime blocks work, man. Usually when you use a slime block, you have to fall from a greater height in order to get the bounce you want. But nope, Steve had 0 blocks the second he jumped onto that slime block, and he flew like 10 to 15 blocks far and up. Like, in game, he would have just fallen off, but more movie magic! Woo! Now, for some reason, Garrett just decides to stay behind. Probably because he thought it was like really cool if he stood behind and saved them. But well, it doesn't really matter because the gas balloon gets hit by something and it flies off, leaving Garrett alone anyways. So he actually tries to attack the piglins and get rid of them, but he just eats a bunch of TNT to his face. Like, this is just an explosion. Like, he's gotta be dead. In Minecraft. And good save again. Now, Steve and Henry crash into a hill with the gas balloon and they pass out for obvious reasons. And now later they wake up in a mushroom. And Steve wakes up first because Dennis kept licking his face. He gets all excited and Dawn and Natalie greet him. Because they actually found them using Dennis's help. And they built a small house out of mushroom. Which is quite decent. Looks pretty nice. Pretty cool. And Henry was still out for the count at that moment. And Steve asks if he's okay. And he's like, he's still stable, but he's just unconscious. And a bit later, Henry wakes up, they get all happy, and now they make a plan to fight against the piglins. And Steve says something along the lines of, like, the command is mine, and together we craft. Like, 1, 2, 3, Minecraft. At least the German version sounded like that. I cannot tell you how that sounded in the English version.
This is yet another longer water break. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed it so far. And once again, tell me what you disliked about it.
Now they make their way back to the village and they gear up. And Dawn, on the other hand, gets the idea to tame some wolves. Which, that kind of reminds me of something.
Technoblade, help me get good.
Oh, okay.
Woo! Look at the dogs. Look at this.
What?
I have
Wait,
two
what
dogs.
the hell? How many? There's actually like 1 million.
I'm pretty sure it was probably just a wish. Wishful thinking. Now anyways, Natalie, Steve, and Henry prepare some weapons, equipment, etc. to, well, defeat the piglins. And Malgosha uses the orb to create a stable portal to allow an entire piglin army and much, much more to travel to the overworld. And I haven't made that many remarks, because that's just an average experience without much needed to be added here. It's not good, but it's also not bad either. However, the piglin army progresses forward, and they created some sort of beacon on top of the portal in order to keep the sun away, so they don't get completely annihilated by the zombification process that takes place. But there weren't any other blocks below that beacon, so it shouldn't even have worked. But more movie magic, I guess.
That comes from Minecraft Legends.
Now, before they actually press forwards, Henry creates a bunch of iron golems with all the iron blocks and pumpkins. And then also puts the boots of swiftness on top of like where the pumpkin should be on the golem, and it creates like a speed golem. I don't know. That made 0 sense at all, but whatever. Bro's really just playing modded Minecraft at this point. You cannot convince me otherwise. Now, the piglins and the golems have a stare down, and Malgosha tells them to stand down and wait for a while, but one of the smaller piglins just runs up to the golems and hits one of them with his feeble sword. And now, all the golems ascend into a frenzy, and just the war starts at that very moment. And the golems actually manage to push back against the piglins, but then the piglin monster, this huge piglin brute thing, steps in and annihilates the speed golem using an arm cannon that is mounted onto his arm, which is quite the innovation, I do have to say. And they have like a stable battlefield at that point. Now, Henry manages to push past the entire horde there, and he uses that ender pearl to get on top of the portal. And then he retrieves the orb. But also, before he actually got to the orb, he used a quarter of a block to get closer to it. Something that, again, does not exist in the game. You have stairs, which is three quarters of a block, slabs, which is half a block, but you don't have quarter of a block. Like, just not even a button could be that required. You get what I'm trying to say? It doesn't exist. Period. Now, meanwhile, also, Steve was facing off against Malgosia. In order to keep her at bay, he said that he has a full set of diamond armor, but he didn't have any diamond pants. He just had a helmet, a chestplate, and some boots. That was everything. Now, I'm pretty sure I know why they didn't give him a full set, because the leggings would have made it very difficult for him to move, so they decided to keep it out. But it doesn't really matter anyways. Now, Malgosia and Steve face off, and Malgosia uses like magic, and actually breaks Steve's chestplate. And so they're fighting and squabbling, having like a face-off, you could say. But because Henry retrieved the orb from the portal, the sun comes up, and all the piglins start to become zombified. But not the piglin monster. He actually attacks, still attacking the portal, which causes Henry to fall off. And it seems like he's done for, because especially the piglin monster then tries to shoot him with his arm cannon, and he has to calculate the exact angle, his velocity, his speed, the speed of the particle bomb. It's actually quite impressive that he managed to pull that off. Wait, no, he didn't. A gas balloon suddenly swoops in and saves him. And well, who's controlling it? Well, nobody else but the man, the myth, the legend, Garrett the Garbage Man Garrison. But wait, how did he survive? Like, he literally just face-tanked TNT. Well, maybe he actually did take that Totem of Undying, but there's like no way that he didn't leave the plane of existence and turn to particles if he hadn't. But honestly, this man survived a creeper to his face, several traps, and TNT as well. This dude is a tank. What? Now anyways, they used the gas to shoot the fireballs at the monster, and they eventually defeat it too. And well, Malgosia was continuing to fight Steve, but due to that sun coming up, she has grown weaker and weaker and weaker, and she wasn't able to reach her potential anymore to beat Steve. And she then falls to a knee and tells Steve to come closer because she has to tell him something. But Steve actually anticipates that something's gonna happen, and he's like, "Oh, you're not gonna do anything to me, aren't you?" And she's like, "Oh no, don't worry about it." And then Steve gets closer and she tries to stab him. But Steve just swipes the knife out of her hand, which was really funny. And then he tries to go away, and she's like, "Oh no, please come back, for real this time, I gotta tell you something." And so he goes back to her, she tries to stab him again, and he pushes it away again. And then he goes off, and Malgosia again is like, "Please, for real this time, I gotta tell you something." And she's like, "Oh no, I don't want to hear it." And Malgosia's like, "I don't even have another knife," and then pulls out another knife and breaks down on the floor before returning to particles. Now a bit later, they use that orb and the crystal to return to their own worlds, and Steve decides to actually follow them, after singing a song about his dog Dennis, which in German again, just no. That wasn't the greatest, I do have to admit. Now upon their return, they all vow to make their lives better. Garrett has renamed his business to The Overworld and creates a fighting game in the Minecraft style, while Henry does the electronic parts. Now we don't fully remember everything due to the scenes that are still coming up, but a bit later, Henry pulls up to school with his jetpack fully intact. My bro's playing creative mode. In real life. That's impressive. And now then a bit later the credits roll, and during the credits we actually see the principal and the villager chilling at her place, and a lawyer or something informs them that her ex-husband is demanding something off of her, but she doesn't even want to talk to him. But then, like, the sports and arts teacher that we've seen earlier in the movie runs in and complains to her that she's with this NPC and not with him. And then the villager starts talking. And not just the typical, ha, ha, but like human language. And then the principal suddenly drops villager language. That was crazy. Shut up. Now, what I really missed during the credits was just a big, in loving memory of Technoblade. That would have made it like 100 times better in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. And now, after the credits, we get another small scene of Steve visiting his old house. He knocks and a familiar looking lady opens the door. And he tells her that he used to live at that house and he wants a trip down memory lane again. He also tells her, "My name is Steve." And she says, "Nice to meet you, I'm Alex." It has taken me until this line to realize who she was. Embarrassing, I know, but my friend next to me was like, "You know who that is?" Already knowing who she was, and I'm like, "An Amaranth cameo?" And then she drops that line. 10 out of 10, absolute cinema.
We're not done yet. We're about to get to the conclusion of the movie. Well, at least my conclusion, but I'm just taking another water break. I'm thirsty. This is not a joke.
Now, we're finally over. This was a Minecraft movie. Now, the idea behind it was that every Minecraft adventure is different, which is why this isn't the Minecraft movie. And they actually did a good job with the script, the scenery, ideas, etc., but it felt bland. Maybe it's because I've grown up quite a bit since the initial announcement pre-COVID, but my inner child is still happy about it. I would have probably taken a different approach, but given that there are nearly endless ways you can design your adventure, any Minecraft movie could be a Minecraft movie. Regardless of how others feel about this, I'm happy that this movie made it to the big screen. I'm happy that we got to see the Square world come to life, and I'm happy that they didn't make it fully live action, keeping the actual Minecraft world as square as possible. I'm unhappy about many other things, such as the absolute zero parody song references. Compared to the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, this was a huge missed opportunity. Now, sure, given the FNAF movie only played one song, and a very iconic one at that, but they had so many cameos from people who helped shape FNAF to what it is today. And we barely see any references to other creators or huge names in the community, other than Technoblade. Which again was a huge missed opportunity. And I'm aware that many YouTubers helped shape the movie, but getting almost zero references just feels like an insult at that point. On that note, thank you for listening. Feel free to share your opinions on a Minecraft movie in the comments, and don't subscribe. I ain't doing another one. Unless...